Let's bring in Fox News senior judicial analyst and host of Fox Nation's Liberty File, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, great to see you.
David.
The original charge 3 years ago was that Exxon was hiding evidence of climate harm from fossil fuels. And did the prosecution find any evidence that they were doing that?
No, they didn't. Now, we say prosecution. This is not an indictment. This is a civil trial. There's no jury. It's just before one judge. But this is a weird case that started out making allegations that Exxon had created evidence to deceive, and the government kept changing the allegations the more they found. Now they basically saying Exxon recorded internally the future costs of remediating environmental issues as less expensive than they knew or ought to have known they would be. The DOJ looked at this and said, there's no case. The SEC looked at this and said, there's no case. But New York has, as Jackie just pointed out, something called the Martin Act, which is the toughest, most demanding securities fraud, state securities fraud law in the land.
But just to follow up, it sounds like the prosecution keeps moving the goalposts.
They do that all the time. They do that all the time, and that's their goal here. You could very well argue that this is a political case. This is an effort to transfer wealth from the largest oil and gas company in the world to the state of New York.
Steve?
Well, look, Judge, thanks for being on the show. And you know, I think you didn't use the two words that describe this case, shakedown, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is a shakedown against Exxon and basically all of the energy companies. And the idea that the investors have been defrauded is lunatic. I mean, actually, Exxon stock has done pretty well over the last 10, 15 years. So no investor was defrauded. How can they even make that claim that somehow investors invested in something that lost money when Exxon hasn't lost money?
This is the point of Ted Wells' argument in the opening, that the whole case is speculative. He looks at the government's lawyers say, can't put anybody on the stand who'll say they lost a nickel. All you can put on the stand is someone who hesitated to invest in the future. That is not a measure of damages.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, Judge, this is the third time this has gone around. The company was exonerated. Isn't this just another example of government going after a productive, prosperous company that actually helps Americans, produces energy? I mean, isn't this the equivalent of, let's say, the police officer pulling someone over and then tapping out their back taillight and saying, hey, we got a problem over there? They're going to find something wrong with Exxon, but because Exxon is a fossil fuel company, that's what they're really guilty of here, is the fact that they deal in oil, not that they actually misled anyone.
This is the here, isn't it? This is the natural progression, Jonathan, of the trend among state attorneys general to seek wealth transfers, first from big tobacco, then from big pharma, now from big oil. And they do it in what for them is a sexy environment, which you saw Jackie's piece showing the demonstrators. There's no jury down there. Who are the demonstrators think they're influencing? These are the radical environmentalists who want to put Exxon out of business and who are trying to use the instrument of government to make that happen.
Look, it's and the next target's going to be big tech, and you already see that in Europe with much more significant fines than $1.5 billion against Facebook and Google.
Right.
So I think this is
by the way, her first demand was $25 billion.
Right, which is certainly not going to happen.
The Attorney General.
Now, I would say that I don't think this is a shakedown. I don't think that this is a defensible case in terms of companies should be able to do internal projections that game out a variety of scenarios without that being subject to fraudulent claims. But it is a certain amount of political comeuppance in that Exxon did try for years to fund scientific research that pointed in a different direction than man-made climate change.
Right.
I'm not taking a position on that. I'm saying that created a political animosity on the part of those who feel like, look, we are not well attending to climate change. And so this is a political case based on a company that has, in fact, funded research to say that, hey, fossil fuels, not such a big deal. Greenhouse gas is not a big deal. That doesn't make the case right.
Most judges would say to the plaintiffs here at the state of New York, bring in somebody who lost money as a result of this. And if you can't, I'm throwing the case out. They can't. It's all speculative. Their first witness is going to testify about why she did not invest, not that she invested and lost money.
I love the fact that the crux of this is that the company lied to itself, which is something that I do every time I get on the bathroom scale. This is a big issue here. I I just wonder, Judge, about the precedent, because if you've ever been inside a big corporation, the right hand doesn't talk to the left hand. There are multiple sets of projections for everything. You get a different piece of information from the CFO that you might get from PR. This is how big companies go. So what's the potential for a really bad precedent that's then applied to other companies as well?
Let me get down and dirty. There is no potential for a precedent because this is New York State Supreme, a very low reputed state court of general jurisdiction. If this were the Southern District of New York, the case would be thrown out. But if we're going to trial in the Southern District of New York, the outcome would be a precedent all across the country.
It's a very complicated case. You summed it up very nicely, Judge. Thank you very much for being here.